Hey everyone, welcome into the latest edition of the Postcast, production of the Casper Star-Tribune and Pokes Authority. I am Davis Potter, Wyoming beat writer for the Star-Tribune, and I am joined by a newbie on this show, our editor and noted football expert, and my boss for, the next 3 or 4 days? Well, I guess by the time people listen to this, it'll be down to 3 days. But Josh Wolfson joins us on this, I guess, another farewell episode, Josh, because we just did this with our former managing editor and former Wyoming beatnik, Brandon Foster, like a month ago when he left us for the Seattle Times. But I guess we're getting good at these things, man. It's sort of bittersweet, but it's another farewell podcast.
Yeah. Well, it is. I guess it's 2 stories, or 2 incidents, so it's time to do a trend story for all you journalists out there. But it definitely is bittersweet. I mean, having both of our most recent college sports reporters move on to some great opportunities, but we're definitely going to miss. We miss Brandon a lot, and we definitely are going to miss you as well, Davis. But you've done great work for us, and I'm not saying that just because you introduced me as the notable football expert that I am, and I'm excited to share my expertise with all the listeners out there.
Yeah. Well, first, real quick, Josh, go ahead and break down what an outside linebacker is.
So an outside linebacker is one of multiple linebackers. Usually there's 3. If it's a 4-3 defense, there'd be 3, and they would be other ones not in the center of the field, but on the sides.
Right. Man.
Bam.
Very good.
Hey,
Look at you.
Maybe I should apply for this job.
I was just about to say, you could be the next Casper Star-Tribune UW's beat reporter.
Oh, that would be great. I feel like the readers would really enjoy my in-depth analysis. My vast reservoir of football knowledge.
Yeah, well, in case for anyone that did not catch on to the sarcasm of that, Josh is a baseball fan. I would say you're right. You're from California, so you're a big Dodgers fan. But football, basketball, some other things not exactly your strong suit. But as you just showed, you're learning.
Yeah. I am a huge baseball fan. I'm a big Dodger fan. I'm the kind of guy that has traveled to Los Angeles to watch some playoff games, watch them fairly religiously. Football, a little more casual. I will watch an occasional football game, and I do root for the Pokes, but more in I'm a Wyomingite and feel like I want to root for my hometown team, but I wouldn't claim to be any sort of an expert or have a hardcore fandom about them. And I know about 2 routes, the go route and the curl route. And if we need to cover that later, I'm happy to. But yeah, my knowledge is a little more limited. If you wanted to talk about Dodger draft picks, I would be very much available for that.
Yeah, well, maybe you and Craig Bull can get in a room and start drawing up some go routes.
Yeah, that's my area of expertise.
I mean, Wyoming does need to improve the passing game, as everyone knows. So maybe you can help out. I don't know, but Josh, I think we sort of buried the lead here. But as you alluded to, this is my last week as the UW sports reporter for the Casper Star-Tribune. Didn't necessarily think that my stay in Wyoming would be this short. I mean, this is a little less than 3 years. I started here, September of 2018, but long story short, I just got an opportunity that was too good to pass up. So my last day will be Friday officially, I do want to, I've put out a bunch of announcements and things on social media, but I did want to tell you on here that I do appreciate you and Jack Nallen, our sports editor, for giving this outsider, so to speak, a chance. I'll be very honest, man. When this job intrigued me when I applied for it 3 years ago, but once this sort of got serious and we got into later rounds of the interviews, I had to look up where Wyoming was on the map. I knew it was out west. I knew it was around Colorado, Arizona, but I wasn't sure exactly. So I'll just be very candid about that. I had to look that up, but no, I appreciate you guys giving me this chance, and I do want to say to the the people in Laramie specifically, because that's obviously where I've lived, covering this beat for the last 3 years, and the UW fan base and people in Wyoming as a whole, they've been very good to me, and I'm appreciative to that, and people being patient with me, and making this feel like home for me, which it was for the last 3 years, and it's a part of my professional journey that I didn't necessarily see coming, but I'm glad it happened, and new experiences, because you only know what you know, right? And so many, and all of us are sort of shaped by what we do experience, and for me to come out here and experience a different part of the country, and get to know people in Wyoming and the UW fan base, and just how fiercely passionate people are about the Cowboys and Cowgirls in the state. I'm very appreciative of my time here, so just wanted to say that.
Well, you've done a great job for us, and I've enjoyed working with you. I've enjoyed seeing you work, and the work's been outstanding. And not only, obviously the football coverage and the basketball coverage, of course, being the primary examples of that, but, I do think it's, important to note that, during the pandemic, for example, you were helping out, covering, sort of the economic impacts of the pandemic in Laramie. You've done, and then having to do some criminal justice reporting on occasion, and then, of course, the rodeo stuff. So, right. It's been a really good ride, and I've enjoyed having you around. I have to say, I was sort of surprised to meet. Maybe this is just my lack of experience with the South, but a Southerner who seemed to not be very into the heat. Which has probably made Wyoming like a really good fit, given that our heat is like 3 months. Yes.
No, that's one of the biggest things I'm going to miss about Wyoming. I won't say the biggest thing, because again, the people and have been great to me out here, but not having to walk outside this time of year and immediately break into an all-out sweat has been a great refuge for me for the last 3 years. I mean, I'm actually going down to Mississippi next week to spend some time with my family before I make the move to South Carolina, which, by the way, I've taken a job covering Clemson athletics. I don't think I mentioned that in the open, but that's where I'm headed. But I'm going back down to Mississippi for a little while before making the permanent move, and I'm not looking forward to getting off the plane and basically stepping into an oven. So
yeah. I do not know how people do that, like the 95% humidity thing.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, the last time I was experienced that was a few years ago. Went to a journalism conference in San Antonio, and stayed in a hotel about 20 minutes away, and thought I would walk every day to the conference. And that was like the worst 20-minute walk I've ever experienced. Yeah. It's so, like, you sweat for an hour after you get done. It's just not okay.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also very hot-natured too, so that doesn't help. Like, even here in Laramie, when it gets up to like 80, man, I'm like, okay, I got to start cracking some windows. But yeah, I'm hoping South Carolina isn't as bad, because they are closer to the East Coast and the beach there. So I'm hoping it's not as bad, but I know there's going to be plenty of humidity. But it's also like I said a minute ago, it's like if you don't know any different, you don't know any different. I mean,
sure.
Living in the South your whole life, it's like people say, how don't you get used to that? And it's like, well, come out to Wyoming and where it snows, 9 months out of the year, and it's frigid. Do you ever get used to that? I don't think you do. You just, you deal with it. You live here, you deal with it. So you don't really have a choice. But and I do want to appreciate you for coming on here again, because I did, full disclosure, I did ask Josh to come on and do this with me, because I wanted to do one more episode before I left officially. So let's go ahead and dive into this, Josh, because this will be a lot of reminiscing, and I'll let you sort of moderate. But there was some news, some pretty big news in the world of college athletics as of July 1st, and that was the NCAA, suspending its rules, I should say, governing name, image, and likeness on an interim basis. So for athletes that go to schools in states like Wyoming that did not have their own statewide NIL legislation, those athletes can now profit off their name, image, and likeness. So in short, everybody in the country now, this is the NCAA lifting its rules on NIL that previously prevented athletes from profiting off their name, image, and likeness. So anybody that's an NCAA member, like the University of Wyoming is, they can now profit off of that. But real quick before I jump into that, Josh, I don't know if you've heard anything, but there's like a group of like, they're not construction workers, but like painters and handymen that are like working on the building right across the street from my place here in Laramie. So, if you hear some people or some trucks or something in the background, I apologize for that while we record this. I've closed all the windows in my condo now, so hopefully limiting some of that. But if you hear some of that, that's what it is. But
okay.
As far as the name, image, likeness stuff, I mean, this was a long time coming. This has been sort of a fight that's been going on between the athletes and the NCAA for a long time. I mean, there have been, the Austin case, that kind of stuff has been going on in the court system for years now, and it was just inevitable. I mean, when you have these schools making millions and millions and millions of dollars off of the sports that, quote unquote amateurs play, this day was inevitable, and it finally got here. It's good for the athletes. I mean, my personal opinion. I think this is something that's been long overdue, and I do like the fact that it's a blanket sort of deal where it's not just it's only legal for your most popular players or your most popular athletes in your revenue sports like football and men's basketball to profit. Like if a women's basketball player wants to hold a camp and get paid for that, they can. If a soccer player wants to go out and give soccer lessons to kids, they can now get paid for that. Golf, tennis, whatever it is. Now, obviously, there's going to be different levels to that. Like, your most popular athletes, your most popular sports are probably going to get more money than others, but, it's a free market type deal. And now any athlete at the University of Wyoming or any other school, you are worth monetarily what somebody thinks you're worth. And, they can pay you whatever they want to.
Right.
So I think that's a good thing. We'll get a little bit more here, but Josh, what's your initial reaction? I know we've had some conversations about this, away from the microphone.
Sure. Well, I think that this is it's funny for as little as I sort of maybe, or as casual of as a fan as I am on college sports. I actually feel really strongly on this. I think that it's a really good thing that these athletes are going to be able to monetize their value, and frankly, because everyone else already was. I mean, it's
right.
I remember, and I've told you this story before, but I'll mention this, for the podcast listeners. Probably about a decade ago, I was sitting in a sports bar in Denver. And this was during the first round of March Madness, and so there's a bunch of games going on all at once. And I sort of had this realization. I was looking around, all these TVs are blaring advertisements at me. All these people are buying beer, buying food, having a great time. Money's getting spent. There's all this economic activity happening, and it sort of occurred to me that everyone else is getting a take on this, except for the people who are actually providing the entertainment. And that's what this is.
Right.
This is entertainment, and the idea that someone who's providing that reason for you to watch not only the game itself, but then the Pepsi commercial that comes on next. I mean, they should obviously be able to sort of monetize that, just like everyone. I mean, if it's good for one person, it's got to be good for everyone. And I think that it's sort of silly to sort of try to make the argument at this stage that this is just some sort of scholastic endeavor, and it would be
right.
Tarnished by having someone be able to make some money off hosting a camp or putting their name on a jersey or whatever it is. So I mean, I think it's a great thing, and I'm glad that they finally got around to do it. And I also think that the writing was on the wall. I mean, there was a recent Supreme Court decision earlier this summer, and it was very clear based on the decision that if the NCAA wasn't going to act, that the Supreme Court was. I mean, they were very sort of clear in being critical of the present arrangement. So, I don't know that you could give the NCAA a ton of credit here. I think they were sort of forced into this knowing that the Supreme Court was going to address this matter very quickly if they didn't.
If they did what?
If they didn't, I'm sorry.
Okay.
In other words, if the NCAA hadn't acted, I think that it wouldn't have been long before the court would have forced their hand on it. In other words, they're responding less to altruism and more to the fact that I think they saw the writing on the wall.
Right, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, what's your take?
No, I agree. I think the lawsuit you're referring to is the O'Bannon lawsuit against the NCAA, which is an antitrust lawsuit has been years in the making, and that goes all back to the NCAA football video games where they quit making the game because the athletes weren't getting compensated, but they were clearly using, even though they couldn't use their names in the game on the back of the uniforms, they would still have. Like a number 2 for Texas A&M was clearly Johnny Manziel back in the day, or number 2 for Auburn playing quarterback was Cam Newton back in the day. So it's very their likeness was very obvious. Yet those players weren't getting a cut of the sales for the video game, so they just did away with it. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And one of the things that sort of never made sense about this whole thing, and look, man, let's just be honest. There's nothing amateur about schools making millions and millions of dollars in revenue off, the kids that are playing this and don't get a. I mean, come on, that's crazy. And the NCAA, they want to protect the idea of amateurism. And that's why they've always fought this, and they're still going, even though they've finally, suspended some of their rules on NIL. There's still going to be some things that they fight and they don't want to allow going forward. And I think some of it's understandable, but I mean, some of it was just their way of thinking and their rules are antiquated. Like it's 2021. Like this stuff wasn't going to fly forever. And you finally you got to a point where the states, by passing their own legislation, they put the pressure on the NCAA, and the NCAA's, I think, saw it coming and just said, you know what, we got to do this. And do they actually feel like these kids should be compensated by third parties? Do they feel that's okay, or is it just relenting to the pressure that the states put on them? I tend to think it's more of the latter.
Yeah.
But one of the things I didn't understand was like, okay, you have these students that are on athletic scholarships. If they wanted to, they could. Before, they couldn't go out and give golf lessons or basketball or put on a camp and get paid for it. Yet other students at that same school that might have been on academic scholarships but weren't playing any sports can go out and give piano lessons or monetize a YouTube channel or do whatever they want to do, and that's fine. But just because they're athletes under this antiquated system of laws that is the NCAA, they can't do that. Like that never made any sense to me.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I think, if anything, I mean, the NCAA has certainly done nothing but, embrace the commercialization of its athletics for decades. And so, I mean, in a way, it's brought this on itself. We've gotten to this point because, I mean, it's had no problems with the monetization of athleticism at the collegiate level. And the only thing that they wanted to prevent was having to compensate the people providing the entertainment. They won't, money was going to be made at every other level but that, or every other step but that. And I mean, again, right. I think this is just sort of the inevitable byproduct of a situation where college sports are a huge economic industry, and you just can't sort of abide a situation. And I think that's, both the states, you saw this in state legislatures, and then again in the Supreme Courts, and I think in the court of public opinion, people just saying, no, that doesn't make any sense, that some guy's going to get penalized for some sort of minor infraction, and meanwhile, we're signing a big contract to advertise this stuff, or however else you're going to monetize it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And, it's a good thing. I don't really see a downside here. Do you?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll hit on that here in a minute. But I did want to go back and read. Now, this is from the NCAA's website and their official announcement on this. So I want to read what this entails, what the policy actually allows.
Sure.
And remember, too, that Wyoming was one of the few states in the country that had not even, I think, drafted or come up with any sort of NIL legislation before the NCAA suspended its NIL rules. So without the NCAA allowing this, Wyoming would, because there were a lot of, July 1st was always the hot date because there were a lot of states, including New Mexico, by the way, which has a school that competes against Wyoming in the Mountain West, that were going to allow these laws to go into effect. But this is from the NCAA's official announcement on this. The policy provides the following guidance to college athletes, recruits, their families, and member schools. Individuals can engage in NIL activities that are consistent with the law of the state where the school is located. Colleges and universities may be a resource for state law questions. So in the case of states like New Mexico that had already passed their own legislation, I think obviously takes precedent over the NCAA and what it's allowing. I think the NCAA is saying that basically the states and the schools sort of work together on this. Next, college athletes who attend a school in a state without an NIL law, such as Wyoming, can engage in this type of activity without violating NCAA rules related to name, image, and likeness. Individuals can use a professional services provider for NIL activities, and that means like an agent or a tax advisor or someone who can help the athletes with their future beyond college, sort of getting them ready for the real world, so to speak. And then student athletes should report NIL activities consistent with state law or school and conference requirements to their school. And as far as Wyoming goes, and athletes that have struck deals, I know that Titus Swin, the running back, announced something about a partnership with an apparel company, and then Sean Chambers, the quarterback, announced on social media just over the weekend that he's going to be hosting a football camp later this month. So I think those are the only two that I've seen. And obviously Sean's isn't an endorsement deal. He's just putting on a camp. At least that's what he's revealed publicly to this point. I mean, who knows? There might be or other athletes that have struck endorsement deals that hasn't been publicized yet. But, as far as the downside to this, I know there are going to be bigger questions about, okay, well, what about boosters? And booster activity, and boosters that might own this car company. What's going to stop them from going out and offering a kid six figures to try to and pass it off as an endorsement deal when really it's just maybe him trying to pay for the kid to come to the school,
right?
Which direct pay for play is against the rules in the NCAA. I mean, I think that is always going to be something that isn't allowed by the NCAA. And it's important to remember that NIL, this is strictly third parties. Boosters, so to speak, aren't supposed to directly pay these kids, and the school can't be involved in giving these kids money in any way. So this is strictly from third party members. But you're going to have people. Okay, well, what's going to stop a booster from going out and offering a kid six figures or something? But guess what, Josh? There's a little secret. This has been going on forever.
Right.
Boosters have been paying kids to go to, particularly at some of those blue blood programs, so to speak. This is just going to bring what's happening under the table on top of the table. There are going to be people out there that say, well, doesn't this mean that the bigger schools can possibly lure the best prospects, and they're just going to get the best players, and everybody's going to settle for what else is left? Well, guess what? Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, they've always been at the top of the recruiting rankings. I mean, last time I checked, since Nick Saban's been in Alabama, they win the recruiting national championship just about every year. The blue chip kids are going to the bigger programs. I mean, Wyoming, and schools like Wyoming, they don't recruit 5-star kids. So I, from a big picture perspective, I think things are going to stay pretty status quo in terms of recruit and what type of kids go to which type of schools. So because all that already happens anyway. I mean, the bigger schools are getting the best players anyway. From a recruiting standpoint, when you look at recruiting rankings, I mean, could there be a case where this specific kid might go here because this state law allows a little bit more than the NCAA is allowing at this school in our state that doesn't even have statewide legislation? Sure, that could happen every once in a while. I mean, I'm sure it will, but overall, I don't really see a downside to it. And like I said, I don't think it's necessarily going to be changing the recruiting landscape a whole lot.
Yeah. I think you're probably right, and I think that I think mostly what this does is sort of. You're right. There might still be some concerns around the edges, but I think broadly this is a really good thing. It's going to really benefit the athletes, and I think it's really. I mean, I think if you're a fan of fairness, I think you should be a fan of this because I think that this is whether or not it's a perfect system, it's certainly a more fair system than the system that existed prior to it.
Right, and here's another part to it that some people may not realize. But this now gives incentive for, sort of the 1% of the 1% in terms of recruits to go to school now because, you have the Major League Baseball draft, which forever has, kids, if they're drafted high enough, they have the option of going straight, or I should say high school kids, not anybody, but high school kids. They have the option to go straight from high school to minor leagues and sign with a pro team right out of high school. You have, in basketball, you have the G League. And all these developmental leagues that are offering some of the highest ranked prospects and some of the top recruits, 6-figure deals to go play basically minor league basketball for a year or two before they enter the NBA draft. If you're the NCAA and you have this $800 million contract with Turner Sports to televise the NCAA tournament every year, you want the Zion Williamsons of the world playing in the tournament. You want the best players or as many good players as you can to draw as many eyes to your TV sets to watch the NCAA tournament. And look, I'm not saying that the NCAA needs every single high school player to play college basketball from a rating standpoint. Because I mean, the NCAA tournament it will forever be popular. I mean, it's just a great event, but. If you're a high school senior and you're looking at this and saying, I've got the G League offering me $200, $300, $500 to skip out on college and go play, or I can go sign. I'm a first-round draft pick in baseball out of high school. I can go sign with a team for $1.5 million or whatever the slot value is. I'm going to do that because I can't get paid in college. Whereas now, if high school baseball players that get drafted don't necessarily like, or I should say, a team that drafts them doesn't meet whatever the kid is asking for financially, or they just don't want to go to the G League. They'd rather go to college, but look, I really like to get paid now. Well, now you have the possibility in college to go get paid. Mm-hmm. And if you're a top recruit, you're going to get all sort of third parties coming after you and giving you endorsement deals, and you might end up honestly getting paid as much as you would have in the G League, or signing for $1 million out of high school to go play baseball. So I think it levels the playing field some from the NCAA's perspective in terms of trying to get as much star power in your sports as possible and giving kids incentive to actually go to college.
Right. No, I think you're right. And I think that's probably a good thing, right? I was wondering, do you think that because I know that there's been sort of a growing feeling among a lot of college sports fans, or just sports fans in general, of sort of being critical of the NCAA and its practices. Do you think this goes far enough that those issues go away, or is sort of the critique of the NCAA as someone or as an entity that sort of uses these athletes and sort of benefits itself much more than benefiting the athletes? Do you think that continues? In other words, does the criticism of the NCAA diminish because of this action, or is there still plenty of other critiques out there of the institution?
No. Yeah, I still think there's going to be plenty of critiques and backlash. Like, I think there's just not a lot of fans of the NCAA and the way they operate. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, so many of their rules are antiquated. And again, I think a lot of people are going to think, and including myself, I'll just be blunt here, I think this is more of a reaction to the pressure that was put on them, other than them saying, you know what, these schools are making millions of dollars. We are a $1 billion industry, literally, because of college athletes. They should get a cut of this. I mean, I think if it weren't for the O'Bannon lawsuit and these these states taking it upon themselves to put the pressure on the NCAA, in terms of allowing college athletes to compensate off their name, image, and likeness, I don't think this ever would have happened.
I totally agree with that.
I think every action requires a reaction, right? So I think this is simply the NCAA being reactionary when they could have been proactive with this a long time ago.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there was no sort of altruism going on here, doing the right thing. I think it's simply, the NCAA realizing that, like, if they didn't act, someone else was going to make the decision for them, and this was sort of the best opportunity. They had to sort of be part of the change rather than having the change just happen to them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So, no, I mean, it's good that they finally relented on it, regardless of the motivation. But yeah, I still think the NCAA is. I think there's always going to be criticism of the NCAA and how they operate. So maybe it'll lighten it a little bit, get some people off their back. But I think that criticism will always be there to some extent.
Sure.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this, Josh?
No, I mean, we're right at the edge of my knowledge here. And I feel like I have, again, sort of a broad sense of this, but this is just like go routes. There's a limit to my expertise, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, no, that's good. And we can wrap this conversation up here. I don't know exactly what the University of Wyoming's NIL policy looks like, because again, with the NCAA, suspending its NIL rules, it's basically up to each school in states where there was not already NIL legislation in place to sort of draft their own policy. And I know I've mentioned this to you. That'd probably be a good story for the next UW beat reporter to work on, and it'll be interesting too to see if the state of Wyoming still maybe at some point introduces its own NIL legislation to take precedence over what the NCAA allows. I don't know. I know we were looking a little bit into that, but that'll be something to maybe keep your eye on going forward. But Josh, we can go ahead and take a break there, and when we come back, we'll just we'll do a little reminiscing of my time here on the UW beat.
That sounds great. Davis. I'm ready to look back while we're looking forward.
Welcome back into the postcast, and now, Josh, I'll hand it over to you, man. Just let you sort of moderate this second segment as we, I guess, take a trip down memory lane.
Sure. Well, let's start out by talking about kind of when you arrived and what was sort of the state, especially of like Cowboys football at the time you got here. If I recall, the Josh Allen era had sort of ended. I remember Brandon, mostly because I remember editing it, Brandon covering the draft and, the Potato Bowl and all that sort of stuff. So, when you arrive, what is sort of the sort of state of Wyoming football as you walk in the door?
Yeah, I mean, they were sort of retooling, I guess, would maybe be the best word to use there. Because, yeah, it was – I mean, I got here, middle of the 2018 season. I remember my first game cover on the beat was Boise State, which did not go well at all for Wyoming. I think they lost like 34-14 or something that year here in Laramie. And me and Brandon have actually talked about this on the podcast, but that game there was also like a weather delay, or not a weather delay, but like there was an air control delay. Like the air was hazy.
Oh wow!
And they postponed the game for like half an hour or something. I was like, oh, this is a great way to start the beat. It's a good intro to this. But yeah, so Josh Allen was gone. They were starting over at quarterback with, at the time, Tyler Vanderwall, and that whole era didn't go too well with Tyler sort of being in and out of the starting lineup, and then ultimately transferring. After the 2019 season, but yeah, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. It's in terms of just taking over this beat in a state like this. It took me a little while just to get used to that dynamic because this is one of the few states where there's only one 4-year school. And that's not to say everybody in Wyoming is like a diehard football fan or whatever, but if you are a college football fan in Wyoming and you follow a team, there's a 99.99% chance it's Wyoming and it's the Cowboys. And where I come from, you have Alabama and Auburn and Ole Miss and Mississippi State and even South Carolina and Clemson and down in Florida. I mean, you got Miami, Florida State, and Florida. So most places the allegiances are split multiple ways, whereas here it's you have a whole state rallying behind one school, and I think it just took me a little while to sort of understand that because I came from a place where it's just there's and obviously Wyoming has CSU and BYU and Air Force, I guess, is some of their main rivalries, but I mean to have in-state rivalries just filled with so much. I mean, like in Mississippi, it's just like hate, man. Like Ole Miss and Mississippi, they just like hate each other. And there's a degree of that too with Alabama and Auburn. I'm sure other rivalries in the South and other rivalries around the country. But to not have like an in-state rival and to not even have another school where those allegiances are sort of split, that was different. And like I said, I do think it took me a little while just to understand that and just to understand like how fiercely proud people from Wyoming are to be from this state and be from this area, which I get. Like I'm proud to be where I'm from, and going back to our whole theme in the open of you're a product of your environment, and
sure.
You're proud to be where you're from, even if where you're from has its issues, and I'm one of those people that thinks like no place is perfect. Every situation, every place can be improved. But people from Wyoming are fiercely proud to be from here, and they're proud of their teams, and obviously they'd love to win every game. And but I think the challenges of this of Wyoming and this job. When I say this job, I mean for like being the coach, like Craig Bowl for basketball or Jeff Linder for Craig Bowl for football and Jeff Linder for basketball. I think some of the built-in challenges make it that much sweeter when a program like Wyoming does win a championship or does do better than maybe people expect them to do, because we've talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast before, but trying to recruit to a place where it snows 9 months out of the year and trying to convince kids to come, hey, you could be playing multiple games in a foot of snow come November, and not having a big state or base of in-state recruiting talent. I mean, I think Wyoming's signed one scholarship kid in football for the last handful of years, if not more. So you always have to be going outside of your home base to recruit the majority of your athletes, and it makes the job, particularly like Wyoming, really difficult, I think. And that's why I think it's such a big deal that that Craig Bowles had the success that he's had with the 4 straight bowl eligible seasons recently. Obviously last year didn't go how they wanted to go, but a lot of different factors at play there. But I mean, it's a very unique situation, and it's always fun to interact with a fan base as passionate as one like this. But and look, there's colleges everywhere have passionate fan bases, but again, to cover a program that's the only 4-year school in the state and the only show in town, so to speak. I mean, that's something different. It's something I really didn't understand until I got here. So, I mean, that's maybe sort of the biggest thing. And, I appreciate, everybody that's read my coverage and interacted on Twitter and other social media, even the angry tweets and the angry emails. And I mean, that's, even if you don't like what you read or don't agree with the opinion or whatever the case may be, that's part of passion, right? Like you're not reading and interacting and doing if you're not passionate about your teams and have a vested interest in what's going on. So I always appreciate that, the good and the bad. So.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point, and just to expand on it, I mean, as far as the importance of the University of Wyoming, I think the University of Wyoming, it's definitely, part of it is the fact that, it's the only university, so there isn't, divided allegiance that you'd see in a lot of states where you've got, University of Montana and Montana State or whatever, same, or even larger states where you might have, I mean, I grew up in a state where there were dozens of universities, but I really think that the University of Wyoming, I would actually argue, even more broadly than just the athletics program and in general, that it is probably the single most important institution in Wyoming, and I feel like it's one of those things that it sort of touches almost everyone, either directly, like I've gone to school there, you've gone to school there, that sort of thing, or that's where I'm sending my children, or that's where my wife attended, or whatever. I think that the institution of the University of Wyoming is hugely important to the citizens here. People feel very, very loyal to it, and when it succeeds, they feel really great about that. And then when it doesn't, they feel that deeply as well. And so I think it's really important. Obviously, I think a little bit as the University of Wyoming, beat reporter, that means you're a little bit of a lightning rod. If they're unhappy, you're going to hear about that on the old Twitter.
I don't know what you're talking about, Josh. I never heard that.
Yeah, but I also think that there's sort of this shared joy when something really good related to the school happens. Whether that, Josh Allen's a great example. I mean, I remember when he was drafted, we had this photo that ran on the front page of the paper of just the exaltation of the Buckhorn and Laramie, just everyone's so happy. And I feel like in a way they all felt like they had succeeded as Josh Allen had succeeded, because there's not a lot, that's such a rare event that when there is that sort of success, it's really it's beyond maybe the normal level of joy that a community would derive from having one of its players drafted. Right. And so I think that you've had it's a big challenge and a big responsibility that you've had the last couple of years as sort of the person that's communicating news about this beloved institution. I imagine you probably felt that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, there was good and bad. I know we've talked before about the famous or infamous, I guess, tweet I put out back covering San Diego State in 2019, where I had somebody tweet at me. It was like, I'm rooting for your Cowboys, and I replied that they're not my Cowboys, insinuating that I don't have a rooting interest. I'm a reporter, not necessarily a fan. And I remember a player quote tweeted that, and my mentions for 24 hours were a complete dumpster fire. But I went on to I put out an explanation the next day, and just saying that that was strictly a professional thing, and that how I did Wyoming has always been good to me, and ever since I had gotten on the beat, but stuff like that, I mean, you're going to hear stuff, but I think part of it too, that I've also grown to realize over the years is even though you're as a reporter you're not necessarily a fan of the teams that you cover. You are covering them and you are relaying a message to your subscribers and your readers who are most are fans. And that, they want you to care enough about what they care about. They want you to care about the teams that you cover just as much as they do. And I think that's that's something whether that's covering Ole Miss before I came out here and started working on the Wyoming beat or being here in Wyoming. I think that's something just as a reporter getting into the business. I think that's something that you maybe sort of learn a little bit more just with experience and just our time spent covering these teams. So I can definitely relate to that, and that's like I said, there's good and bad with that at times, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time on this beat. I've thoroughly enjoyed living in Wyoming. Like I said in the open, I expected to be out here a little longer than this, at least. But life happens, and I'm thankful that I got to experience this as part of my professional journey.
Sure. So looking back, let's keep reminiscing. Looking back, I wanted to ask you, what would you put as like sort of the biggest? Not your favorite. We'll get to favorite in a minute, but biggest game or biggest sports moment that you personally covered while in Wyoming, covering the University of Wyoming for the Star-Tribune.
Missouri game 2019. No, there's not even a question. Because Wyoming came. You talk about a game where nobody gave Wyoming a shot. The ultimate underdog. I think Vegas, if I remember correctly, they were like at least a 17.5, 18-point favorite, or underdog, I should say, against Missouri. You got a Mountain West team going up against the big bad SEC, and Missouri had that year they had Kelly Bryant, the transfer from, ironically enough, Clemson, at quarterback stepping. Missouri was like getting top 25 votes in the preseason. Nobody gave Wyoming a chance in that game. Including me, really. I thought Wyoming, knowing their style of play, I thought they could sort of grind it down, shorten up the game, and make it a game for a half or three quarters before Missouri's talent just sort of took over and they ran away with it. But the biggest memory that I have from that game is the way that Wyoming dominated Missouri in the trenches on the offensive line. Wyoming pushed them around. I think Wyoming rushed for almost 300 yards in that game. Xavier Valladay had a 60-plus yard touchdown run. Sean Chambers had a 75-yard touchdown run. Just ran all over them. And I don't think anybody expected to see Wyoming dominate in the trenches the way they did in that game. And, they created a bunch of turnovers and, to sort of, I think, neutralize maybe the sheer talent advantage that Missouri had, but getting Missouri moved at the point of attack, that was no fluke, and they did that for 4 quarters and held on for that win. And I think that's one of those moments where it's like, you got outside of Wyoming, everybody in the local media, national media, or just college football fans in general, you thought, and I'm speaking just from like a Wyoming perspective, but you thought Missouri, this SEC team is going to come in here and just run all over us and dominate us, and we showed you, we beat them. Like, I think that's a huge. I think that win. I think it's the biggest win in the Craig Bowl era. But I think that win is such a huge point of pride for Wyoming and its fan base. For people to sort of look down on Wyoming going into that game, and then Wyoming pulls off the upset. I think that's a moment where Wyoming in the state could really sort of poke its chest out a little bit.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think that Wyoming tends to have that feeling of, that flyover sort of, people are kind of undervaluing us or not giving us enough credit, and then, coming along and punching the bigger school right in the mouth. I think that people just were really, I'd say really, really excited about that, with the exception of one managing editor. I have to bring it up, but Brandon Foster, when he who held the beat before you, I feel like he asked for that day off, or let me know about that around the same time he had taken the job, that he had moved from being the college sports reporter. The other thing, whenever I think about that game, I just think about Brandon Foster going from so excited to see his alma mater in his adopted home to like just sadness.
Yeah.
And probably the one sad person, because I feel like the rest of the state was pretty much ecstatic about what happened.
Oh yeah, me and Brandon have talked about that before, but no, that was easily the most, or the biggest game that I covered that Wyoming won. Again, I mean, nobody, they were the ultimate underdog in that game, and did what they had to do to pull it off.
Sure. So let's switch, and that was sort of the biggest game, or most important. But obviously, there's, as I'm a longtime reporter before I became an editor, and there's those kind of, what might be the biggest thing you cover isn't necessarily the thing that maybe you personally enjoyed the most, or your favorite sort of moment, because a lot of that stuff happens in small ways or behind the scenes. So I'm just kind of wondering if you had, a favorite moment or a highlight from the beat, just kind of personally, maybe not necessarily the biggest sort of moment, but just something that from the work itself, or the experience of that you're going to take with you when you drive out of the state of Wyoming in a few weeks.
Yeah, I would say our coverage of the 50th anniversary of the Black 14.
Sure.
That was just a really neat event to cover. And look, I know there's probably people around the state that still have, their own opinions and own thoughts about what happened. But just from the Black 14's perspective, for me, because this is what I did. I sort of did the door-to-door approach to getting that story and to talking to those guys, because I think I don't remember how I tracked down. I'll be honest, John Griffin is the one that I talked to the most, and that I probably still keep in contact with the most since then. But I think I got his contact information first. I believe that's how that went. I'm trying to remember. But, I sort of got everybody, all the other living members' contact information from him. And I just, to call those guys, first of all, as someone that was, less than a year on the beat at that point. They didn't really know. But to sit there and say, hey, would you talk to me about, one of, if not the most painful moment of your life all over again, and to sort of, pull that back out, and ask them to talk, to sort of relive that all over again. I mean, of all of them of all the living members that I reached, all of them talked to me. There was only one, Joe Williams, the running back on that team, or 68 team, I guess, before they were dismissed. He was the only one that I never got a hold of. But everybody else was willing to talk to me, and and was very candid about how they felt about the situation, good, bad. I really appreciated that, and I really respected that, and and obviously our whole project was a group effort. I mean, I know I did most of the legwork on that, but we had a lot of help, from some reporters who are also no longer with us at this point, and you and some of our editors putting that together, and to just to be able to tell that, not from an athletic program standpoint and a football program standpoint, but also a university and a state standpoint, to tell it from those angles of how things are different 50 years later, or how they even might be the same, as far as how minorities and black people are treated at the university and in Wyoming as a whole. I think that was, first, I think that was a really important story to tell. But number two, I enjoyed doing that, and I really appreciated the Black 14's cooperation with that. And I should say I'd be remiss if I didn't thank some some current and former administrators within Wyoming's athletic department helping me do that and give me some of the access that I needed for that. That was just a really cool thing. Not only from an athletics and sports standpoint, but from a societal angle. To sort of revisit that 50 years later was really, really neat.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you said that, because I think for me as an editor, that was one of the more meaningful things I've been involved with. I mean, I think it was that special section that we put together, and then all of the coverage in a broader sense, I think was really important. And I think that it was sort of fascinating to see how the university and the state of Wyoming had sort of how dramatically they had changed from 50 years ago when they kick off the players off the team, and they're chanting the coach's name at the next game, to literally welcoming these guys back to the stadium and embracing them again and apologizing. I think is a very significant moment, both for the university and for our state. So I definitely would agree that was a big highlight, and you did a fantastic job at it. I mean, it's a tough story to get right, and I think one of the things that I really would give you a lot of credit for was sort of looking back at that special section was the decision to really let the players do the talking and let it be their story, and we used a story where it's called an oral history, where it's basically almost all just quotes with a little bit of narration to just keep you on the road, so to speak. But I really appreciated that approach, because I think that a lot of other people had sort of discussed this issue, but I think that it's really about the players, and I think the choices that they made and sort of the way their lives were altered. And so giving them an opportunity to really explain those events and where they're at now, I think was really the right way to go. So, great work.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'll just say one other thing about this. Regardless of your opinion on the Black 14 and what all transpired then and is transpired now, to sit there and watch 70-year-old men on that football field when they were recognized at halftime of the Idaho game and sob, like, man, if that doesn't do something to you, you're not human. Like, that's just considering everything that happened 5 decades ago, and I mean, for some of them, it's still really painful. I think the university has done a really good job of sort of mending that and that whole situation with the players themselves. But I know some of them, thought they would never come back to Wyoming, and I think there's a select few that still don't want to come back. But I mean, to see grown men out there on a field crying and what sort of the reconciliation means to them, and not only them but their families and their children. I mean, that's a really touching moment. I mean, that's something I'll never forget. Yeah, watching that.
Yeah, it is. I would imagine that'll be a career highlight. Forever for you, regardless of what. Well, I'm sure you're going to do some great stuff. Covering Clemson and whatever else happens in your professional career going forward. But I think that's events like that just don't come around all that often. I mean, it's sort of to be there and be the lead reporter on that is it's a special thing to be able to be part of that.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to like not being all that familiar with Wyoming and this region of the country, like I'd never heard the Black 14 until I moved out here.
Right.
And I even remember when you were sort of getting us all together and we're like, hey, we need to do this project. We want to do this. I remember being like, wait, who's the Black 14? And then doing the research on it, and for me personally, to go from that point to being able to, as you sort of alluded to, just let them tell their stories and what had happened. That was really interesting. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about one other thing at least before we get done, which is I was thinking about this. oftentimes when I interview, I interview obviously mostly the news jobs, but I also oftentimes do the second interviews for sports jobs as well. And one of the things I often ask reporters is potential reporters is to try to get a sense of what they know about Wyoming. Do they have any, prior experience in the state, even if it's just, going on vacation to Yellowstone? Because, you always wonder, is it the kind of person that's going to be able to, adjust to what can be sort of a dramatic change? It's obviously it's a lot colder and windier than a lot of places, but more than that, obviously the isolation, the fact that everything's much more spread out. Some people really like that and do flourish in that environment, and some people are like, oh man, I'm not close enough to my big box stores and I just can't handle that, or have a hard time adjusting to it. And I remember asking you, trying to get a sense of, backstory in Wyoming, and clearly did not have a big personal connection.
I'm pretty sure my answer was nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm just kind of curious. I'd like to hear what you have to say as far as, as someone who's, from the South, from a very different part of the country, to come to Wyoming and spend a couple of years here. What are the things that you sort of take away from the experience outside of the professional side, but just, living in a very unique and special part of the country? What are you going to take with you when you leave?
Well, memories, first of all. But also patience. I think I'm getting a little more patient here because snowing as often as it does. Like I'm not used to that. I'm so used to just being able to get in your. You take for granted like just being able to get in your car and go wherever you want to whenever you need to. Wyoming, there's some days you're snowed in, and you might you might be snowed in for 2 or 3 days. I remember actually the last big snowstorm we had in Laramie, I'm sure just the whole state of Wyoming. Yeah, I remember Casper too. When was that? March or April?
March.
But, yeah. And I remember looking like outside and being like, you know what? I don't really know if I should do. I needed to go to the store. I thought. Well, full disclosure, it was bad preparation on my part because I'd been to this like 2 days before it started snowing. I'd been to the store and I thought I'd gotten enough of what I needed. Turns out I didn't, so I needed to go back to the store again. And I was pulling out of my parking spot where I lived, and I remember thinking, I don't know if I should do this, but I did it anyway, and I ended up getting stuck. But I mean, literally, probably less than 10 minutes later, there was a truck with 2 guys. They come by and they stopped their car, got out and they were like, "Hey, do you need some help?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just need you to because my car was stuck. It was buried under 2 inches of snow ice, so I couldn't get any traction to go forward." And they were like, "Yeah, man, we'll help you, whatever." And I was like, "Really?" Yeah, they were like, "Yeah." So yeah, I was like, "Yeah, if you could just loosen up some of the snow and ice in the front so I can get some traction, that'd be great. I'd really appreciate that." And come to find out, they were part of this. I don't know if it was a group, but maybe some friends or people that knew each other. They were going out in vehicles that were far more equipped to handle those sort of winter conditions than my car was. They were going out and using their time just to help people that might be stuck. Or needed to get out. They were just going around. Anybody that they saw stuck or needing help, they got out. They had with their trucks and their shovels and just going around helping people out. And I thought that was really, really neat. I'd never experienced something like that before. I guess probably because it doesn't hardly ever snow in the South. But yeah, that was a neat thing. That was. I think that was just sort of embodied the spirit of Wyoming and the people here. But I even forgot the question you asked me at this point.
I was just kind of what are you taking away from the experience? Or favorite parts of Wyoming. What have your observations? I'm always sort of fascinated. Because I've been here 14 and a half years. So, it's been a bit, and, seeing sort of the state through someone's eyes that maybe, is it's sort of still a new place for them, and they're coming from a very different sort of environment. I just am always sort of fascinated to hear people's sort of observations of the state, and I was just kind of curious what yours were,
Oh, yeah. Oh, the natural beauty. That's what I was going to say, too, because, coming from the South, we don't see mountains. And, to go, like, I told you this, too, but, I've been wanting to get out to Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks ever since I've been here. And then when I, accepted this other job that I'm moving into, I sort of put an emphasis on that. I was like, I got to get up there before I leave. And so I went out there last week, a week or two ago. And just, the scenery and the mountains. And it's like that at a lot, it's not just Yellowstone and Grand Teton. So obviously it's on a much grander scale out there. And, those are, world famous parks and attract all sorts of tourists. But, it's sort of that way anywhere you go in Wyoming. Here in Laramie at War Memorial Stadium, you got mountains in the background. When you're looking, from the press box or whatever, it's a beautiful state. And I'm definitely going to, I've gotten more into being an outdoors person. I'm still not a huge outdoors person, but I've gotten much more into it. Like, I'll go on hikes every so often, and, just because that's part of Wyoming, that's part of the country. I think it just sort of lends itself with the terrain and the mountains and things like that. But the views, man, it's hard to beat. If you just like the nature and some of the natural beauty, Wyoming's as good as it gets. So I'm gonna miss waking up and seeing mountains every day, but.
It is something else, and I think that
it's majestic. I think that's the word I was looking for. Majestic.
Yeah.
There you go.
Majestic is a really good word. I think there's a sense of awe that you sometimes get. I think that a lot of people sort of think of Wyoming maybe as like a lonely tumbleweed rolling across the prairie.
Yeah.
Wide and vast prairie, and there definitely is that. But there are some just really, really insanely beautiful, majestic places in the state, and a lot of places that I think one of the things that's most special about it is because it's a lightly populated state. It's you can go see this thing that maybe if it was in California or Michigan or New York or wherever, there would be a horde of people there, a big crowd, and you'd hear kids crying and dogs barking, and you really couldn't sort of appreciate it in the same sort of way. And I think that one of the things that's really special is there's just a ton of these, Yellowstone, Grand Teton are fantastic places. Everyone should check them out. But there's these, places that are nearly rival that beauty, and you can go there and you're the only person there, or there's a few people there. And I think that is, just outside of Laramie, going up into the Snowies, in kind of your neck of the woods, or like, up here in Casper, we go up on Casper Mountain all the time, and, you just feel like you're in a totally different environment. And, I think that's one of the things that makes Wyoming a really special place. So, well, I guess I real quick before.
I wish somebody had told me also though before I went out to Jackson Hole that it basically turns into Atlanta in terms of traffic this time of year. Oh my God! Like you couldn't at the end of the day, because so many people stay outside of Jackson Hole, because it's so expensive to stay there. But getting out of there at the end of the day was awful. It took forever. Just bumper to bumper traffic for miles and miles. I guess I should have probably expected that, knowing it's right in the middle of tourist season in the summer. But, that was eye-opening.
Right. It is. It's totally eye-opening. It's just it's a really unique experience, and I'm really glad that you had a chance to see it. One of the things that's really nice for me as the editor is being able to bring people in and let them sort of experience what I think is a really, really special state. So, I'm glad you had a chance to do it,
Yeah, me too.
Cool. Well,
I have one question for you, Josh.
Sure.
Do I have a Southern accent?
Do you have a what?
Do I have a Southern accent?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Not a
See, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's that bad. But like when I've talked to people out here before, I've had multiple people say, like I'll introduce myself or whatever, and then they'll say, "You're not from around here, are you?" Or some variation of that. And they're like, "Yeah, I can tell by the accent." Which I don't know. I guess I do. I don't think I have a very strong one, but I guess I do have one. In there.
I would definitely. I mean, it's not like this big like Georgia drawl or something like that. Like my God, but but you definitely have a little of a Southern accent thing going. I mean, mostly,
okay.
I mean, I think that's one of the things. Maybe you only notice the accent when you're. I think people say Californians have an accent. I think if you live in California, you never hear that. But I definitely think you got a little bit. Instead of talk, it's talk. Yeah. I definitely caught a little bit of it.
Okay. All right. Cool. I mean, that's fine. I don't have any problem with having a Southern accent. I'm proud of where I'm from, but I think I listen to myself talk and then think of other people like in the South talk, and it's like, I didn't think I really had one that bad, but yeah, if all you ever hear is people in the South talk, and you get out here, I guess so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, I think I can definitely confirm that to you. If I can give you anything for your time here, I can confirm to you that you do indeed have a Southern accent. So I'm and it's a good thing. It's a good thing, So
yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for letting me pick your brain for a few minutes about the work and the job and everything else. Anything else you wanted to say before we you sailed off into the sunset, or rode off? I think would be more appropriate since it's a Wyoming thing.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to reiterate my thanks for all of our subscribers and readers and Wyoming fans in general for just following along and reading and subscribing and interacting and listening to our podcasts, and it's meant a lot to me, and the fact that people here were so willing to trust me and my reporting in such a short period of time, in a place that I had never been before. That really meant a lot to me. And Josh, I know you guys have some decisions to make in terms of the podcast and what direction you guys decided to take this. If you guys could decide to continue with it, I hope you guys do. I know there's some stuff that we've talked about before regarding this, but yeah, I think we've gotten a good following and built a good following. I can't take credit for starting this because obviously I think Brandon and Brady Altmans, our former preps reporter, actually were most responsible for getting this thing started. But I do hope you guys find a way to continue with it in the future, because I think we've built a pretty decent following, and like I said, the people that have listened and interacted with us in recent years have been really good, and I'm glad. I'm glad that people have trusted us enough to be their go-to news source for UW athletics, and have shown us some love over recent years. So
yeah. Well, I definitely think that's the plan. Is to keep it going. I really like it, and I feel like sports podcasts. I think podcasts in general, there's just a huge interest in them. Sports podcasts, I think that's one of those things that people want to follow. And I mean, you've done a great job. Brandon did a great job, Brady, and I think that, that's definitely something we're going to, I don't think this is the last Pokescast. It's maybe the last Davis Potter era Pokescast, but I think Pokescast endures.
Yeah. Well, I do have one other question or opportunity for you, Josh. If you just want to go ahead and tell us who the next UW beat reporter is going to be, you can just break the news here.
You know what? I don't actually know the answer to that question. I can tell you that we have several people that we've received a bunch of applications, and we're still in the interviewing process. So stay tuned there. I would love. this is neither here nor there, but I'm going on vacation tonight, and I would love to have that sort of box checked before I leave, but I don't unfortunately anticipate that happening tonight.
Yeah. Well, hey, you take your time, man. I didn't know where y'all were in the process either, but if you had decided somebody was going to give you a chance to just tell everybody, go ahead and tell everybody. But
I wish. We're actually doing interviews. I know sports editor Jack Nallins is setting up some interviews, and we're making some progress there. And like I said, I'm excited about the group that we have. I think we're going to find an excellent person, but sometimes we want to make sure we get it right. We want to make sure it's a really important beat. We want to make sure we get it right.
All right. Well, I guess we can get out of here on that, Josh. Anything else? Any party shots before we get out of here?
No, I just thanks again for all of your excellent work. I've really enjoyed working with you, and I've enjoyed sort of reading your work and appreciating what you're doing. And I think a lot of people don't realize how challenging this job is, in the sense that there's always news happening, and then just the sort of the pressure. I think most people would have a hard time dealing with the pressure of having a quick deadline, just breaking news and all that sort of stuff, and competition, all that sort of stuff. And you did a great job, and I've really enjoyed working with you, and I'm just very much looking forward to seeing what you do next.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, man. And again, appreciate everybody, all the subscribers, readers, and listeners for the past 3 years. It's a good job, so whoever you end up hiring will be stepping into a good situation. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Pokes Authority. You can follow, if you still want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Davis E. Potter. This podcast is found on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Omni. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast, download it, give us that 5-star rating. As always, our coverage can be found at trib.com and pokesauthority.com. Josh, appreciate you joining me. And again, signing off for the final time, just thank you to our Star-Tribune listeners and subscribers and this whole state for embracing me the way you have the last 3 years. So I will see you guys down the road.